So, good morning again, friends. Welcome to Sunday service. Welcome to those joining online. I am reading from Rays of the One. Welcome to Masks. Who knew? I'm reading from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriya-yoga, based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. This week's topic: self-effort too is needed. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. These past weeks we discussed the need for balancing self-effort with receptivity to divine grace. Both are important in the spiritual life. Passive dependence on grace hasn't the magnetism to attract grace. Boastful self-confidence, however, which closes itself off from the higher divine power, is shallow, brittle, and given life's many uncertainties, susceptible to ultimate failure. There is a story in the Bible that illustrates the need to put forth personal effort so as to draw magnetically on the divine power. The story occurs in the Gospel of St. Luke. But as he went, the crowds nearly suffocated him. Among them was a woman who had had a hemorrhage for 12 years and who had derived no benefit from anyone's treatment. She came up behind Jesus and touched the edge of his cloak. As a result, her hemorrhage stopped immediately. "Who was it who touched me?" Jesus asked. When everybody denied it, Peter remonstrated, "Master, the crowds are all around, pressing you on every side." But Jesus said, "Somebody touched me. I felt power going out from me." When the woman realized that she had not escaped notice, she came forward trembling and fell at his feet and admitted before everyone why she had touched him, adding that she had been instantaneously cured. "Daughter," Jesus said, "it is by your faith that you have been healed. Go in peace." Self-confidence and self-effort are necessary as the ignition of a car is necessary to the motor. Of what use the ignition, however, if the motor itself will not work? Wise is he who realizes the real power in the universe and guides his life by that supreme power. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, "Those who meditate on me as their very own, ever united to me by incessant worship, I make good their deficiencies and render permanent their gains." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Would you move that table back, please? That's good, thank you. Good morning, everyone. We're back to masks. Well, I personally know 25 people who've been sick this week, so we have to do the small things that we can. So I was reading an article yesterday or a few days ago about saints. I've always wondered about saints. I collected holy cards as a child. I grew up Catholic, so Catholic saints were always very dynamic to my consciousness. I always thought about them as superheroes, really. They have a direct line to this infinite source of power. They can do amazing things. They experience tremendous love and peace in their hearts. They can heal the sick. They can raise the dead. It's amazing. So as a child, I was just captivated by them. And I'm writing a book about St. Francis, little children's book about St. Francis, because They are superheroes of the spirit. These great souls who have done the interior work. They have renounced the unessentials, as this affirmation said, and they have connected with the divine. So this article was talking about some graves, archaeological digs that they had discovered, in which they found the bones of what they assumed was a man who had done all of these tapasya things, all these self-sacrificing things. We hear about saints in India who stand on one leg for 12 years, do all these austerities to break the rope, the chain of the breath and the body and the spirit. They want to break that chain. So they want to do all these sacrifices. And this person had done some austerity like this of wearing heavy chains to impede the flow of movement. And they discovered that it was a woman. Now they could do the DNA testing and realize that, it wasn't just men who were performing austerities. Women did too. But of course, there's lots of women saints. In India, in the Western traditions, it's an equal opportunity for all of us. And now we don't go in so much for self-flagellation, whipping ourselves. That was a time in the medieval era when the body was seen as the enemy. But now, for us now, the payment has been exchanged for calm acceptance and joy. So that's the austerities that we do now. I was quoting the Festival of Light. What we do now is make unessentials something that we leave behind. And the ego is one of them. We're trying to keep ourselves always on a high plane of consciousness. And I love something that Emerson said about keeping your mind positive, continuing to put out energy all the time to keep yourself uplifted. He said, nerve yourself with incessant aspiration. What better way can we do that than by studying the scriptures, by studying Master's teachings, by keeping ourselves incessantly inspired with aspiration. I was thinking of this poor woman who had been hemorrhaging for 12 years and not received any benefit from anybody's treatment. And it reminded me of Job. I love the story of Job. So just to refresh your memories or to hear it for the first time, it started with the angels coming to God in heaven to report on the activities of the earth, to commune with God, to be in his presence. And this time Satan came along. And God said to Satan, "So what have you been up to?" And Satan said, "I've been all over the earth. I've just been looking at everything." And God said, "Did you see my faithful servant Job?" And Satan said, "Yes, I saw it. But he's only faithful because you've given him everything." In the Bible it says, Satan said, "You've created a hedge around him. You've protected him. He has wealth, he has health, he has family, he has all possessions. But if he didn't have those, God, Job would curse you to your face. And God said, we'll see about that. I give you permission to take everything away from him, but don't hurt him. So Satan was very excited about this and went down to earth. And in one day, he eliminated Job's wealth and his family, all of his lands, all of his servants, all of his treasured camels and sheep and donkeys, and all that he had was gone in one day. Satan had sent in warriors, he had sent in natural disasters. All of Job's children were in one house, and Satan created a hurricane, and the house fell on all of them. They were all gone. And Job rent his garments, and he fell down on the ground, lamenting the loss, especially of his children. And he said, I came into this world with nothing, and I leave this world with nothing. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Well, sometime later, the angels were again in heaven, and Satan came in again. And the Lord reminded Satan, my servant was faithful. He stood firm when you took everything from him. And Satan said, well, a man loves his own skin better than anything else. If you attacked and made him unhealthy, if you attacked his health, he would curse you. I know he would. And the Lord said, well, let's see. I give you permission to inflict him with a disease, but take care not to kill him. So Satan was jubilant at this. He went out, found Job, and he covered Job with boils, painful, horrible boils, even on the soles of his feet, so that he couldn't walk without terrible pain. And Job was horrified, in tremendous pain. His wife came to him and said, how can you trust God? He did this to you. And he said, we accepted everything God gave us when it was all good. We have to accept the bad too. And so Job sat on the ashes of his house. That's all that was left. He sat on the ashes, alone, in pain, crying out to God. And he had good friends. He had 3 good friends, and these friends came. They heard what had happened to him. They wanted to be with him. They came. They saw him. They were horrified. They couldn't even speak. They just sat on the ground with him in the ashes for 7 days and 7 nights. They didn't even talk. Finally, they wanted to comfort him. They wanted to give him energy. They wanted to help. So they said, you know, Job, you must have done something. In other words, this is your karma. Of course, it takes a lot longer to say that in the Bible, but that's what they said to Job. And Job said, look, I haven't done anything. I have been praying. And they said, your children must have done something. No, I've done sacrifices just in case my children did anything. I have done my best. I don't understand why this is happening, but I'll tell you, I feel like I'd be better off dead because I cursed the day I was even born. I'm in so much pain. So the friends went away. Job is, again, just alone on the bed of ashes, crying out to God, basically saying, talk to me. Tell me what I can do. Help me. Show yourself. So God does. He comes in this incredible storm, like a whirlwind of storm, and he speaks in a voice of thunder, and he's talking to Job, and he says, basically, pull yourself together. Be a man is the phrase that he says. Be a man, because I'm going to ask you some questions and I want some answers from you. So what he's saying is pull your energy together, get centered, and listen to me and tell me the answers to my questions. So Job does his best. And God says, where were you when I laid the foundation of the world? And Job kind of hangs his head. God says, do you command the morning to appear? Do you guide the stars across the heavens? Do you give the horse its strength? Do you feed the raven and all the birds of the air? Job is humbled. He's on the ground, hiding his face. And he says, Lord, forgive me for what I've said in my pain. I trust in you. And Job has passed the test. So God then speaks to one of the three friends of Job, and he says to them, what you said about Job, basically having bad karma, is not true. So I want you to do a sacrifice now. I want you to perform a burnt sacrifice to me, asking that Job be the intercessor, to intervene between me, God, and you, three, his friends. So they do that. They perform a ceremony and they ask Job to intercede for them. And Job prays for them. And through that act, everything is mitigated. His health is restored. His wealth is restored. His family is restored. He lives a long and glorious life. The Bible says he's able to see 4 generations of his grandchildren from his 7 sons and his 3 daughters. So what we can gain from this, first of all, I love one of the things that Job says. Even when he's in pain, even when he's suffering so much, he cries out and says, though he slay me, though God slay me, yet will I trust in him. So if we are pushed to the edge and beyond the edge, we're hanging on to the edge with our fingernails, yet we have to trust in him. That's the lesson of Job. And another lesson about the Satan aspect of this story reminds me of something that Lahiri Mahashaya wrote to a disciple of his. saying Satan is all around the mind. So imagine that. It's Satan feeding you those thoughts of, I'm weak, God doesn't love me, this is impossible, I can't survive. That is the devil. You can't listen to that stuff. You have to be positive. You have to nerve yourself with incessant aspirations, as Emerson said. You have to keep your mind elevated. And so do the things that create that positive mindset. I was reading a wonderful couple of books by David Mitchie. They're in the boutique, I believe. He's a Buddhist, and so he wrote a spiritual thriller that has all these wonderful principles of yoga, Buddhism, the truth. And one of the things he said was that this character was creating the circumstances for success. He was a disciple that was pretty dim-witted. He just wasn't very smart. But he studied hard. He studied all the time. He put in the hours when everybody else was off having fun. He would keep studying. He was creating the causes of intelligence. And in his next life, he was born as a quantum scientist. He was brilliant because he had created that. If we don't have health, if we don't have wealth, if we don't have family, if we don't have 3,000 camels that we really want, or whatever it is, if we are creating the causes of health, the causes of wealth, if you want to be wealthy, be generous. If you want to be healthy, observe God's laws. I don't know what you would want to do if you wanted camels, but you can figure that out. But be positive. Don't allow negativity into your mind. Emerson uses the word incessant aspirations. We can do incessant affirmations. Keep your mind positive. No matter what happens, God will be there. You know, if we open a seed, there's nothing inside. The power to grow is invisible. The power is in that seed, but we can't see it. And so it is with God. He is there. There's nothing that was made that is not Him. It's all made by God. There's a great little joke. I'll just end with this. There's a scientist talking with God. They're having a conversation. And the scientist is bragging. He's saying, God, I can create anything. Science is the new God. I can make life from a test tube. I can, all these different things I can do. And God said, oh, really? Okay. Well, let's see what you can do. And the scientist is all excited, and he grabs a handful of dirt, and he says, now, I'm going to start just with this handful of dirt. And God said, oh, wait a minute. Get your own dirt. God bless you.
This topic is very poignant, this story, the story of the woman with the hemorrhage for 12 years. It's very poignant. I mean, imagine, if you will, if you want to, it's a little horrifying. I mean, you would be a little anemic, I would think, bleeding for 12 years, maybe not having a lot of energy. Somehow, she hung in there and stayed with it. Evidently, she went to a lot of different people because she tried, she didn't benefit from anybody's treatment of her, but at least she tried. Means she still clung to that hope. It reminds me of a friend of ours who lived at Ananda many years ago, who back in the 80s contracted HIV and later turned into AIDS. But at that time, HIV was considered a death sentence. It was just like, this is incurable. This is really scary. This is like big, bad, whatever. And she was determined, and she went to Swami Kriyananda, and she asked him, basically, what should I do? And he gave her words to all of us through her. He said, don't buy into the consciousness of disease. And in other words, don't take on that consciousness. It's not you. You may have this condition, but the condition is not you. And she hung around for another 10 years. She did affirmations. She created a couple of chants or several chants that were wonderful based on Yogananda's affirmations. She surrounded herself, just as what Nirmala was saying, surrounded herself with a hedge of support, you could say, in terms of people who supported her and energized her. And she made it for 10 years. And that was miraculous at the time. That was unheard of, impossible at the time. That kind of self-effort is necessary because it is easy in this world to buy into the consciousness of disease in one way or another, of limitation in one way or another. And we say, oh, poor me. One of the most natural things in a situation like that, we get sick, have an injury. A couple of years ago, I had a whole mess of broken bones. I was up here giving Sunday service wearing the collar of shame, so to speak, neck collar. I mean, it was very easy to sort of buy into, okay, well, things are not working quite as well as they were before. Why me? That's one of the classic questions. Why did this happen to me? Well, Job asked it. She probably asked it, this woman in the story from the Bible. And there's no immediate answer. Yes, we can say, it's your karma. Great, fine. What do we do with that? We get on the wavelength of health. We get on the wavelength of divine consciousness. There's another story that this story of the woman reminds me of. The centurion. So this is a Roman centurion. He has 100 men under him to command. And so he has a beloved servant who is very, very seriously ill, unto death. And the centurion really wants this man to be healed. So what does he do? He sends the elders of the Jews to Jesus. He sends Jesus' own people to him and says, I have basically to tell Jesus, will you please heal my servant? And the elders come to Jesus and say, this guy is worth troubling yourself over because he has built us a temple. This Roman centurion built the Jews a temple. And he's an honorable person. And so, will you please trouble yourself? Well, Jesus starts to walk towards that in that direction. While he's still a long way off, the centurion sends a servant to Jesus of his own house, and he says, don't come. I'm not worthy to have you enter my home. I am a person under authority, and I have people under my authority. And if I say to one of them, go, he goes. And if I say to another one, come, he comes. And if I tell a servant to go do something, he'll go and do it. All you have to do is give the word. And I know my servant will be healed. And Jesus responds. Oh, and the other thing he says is, and I didn't want to come to you myself because I did not feel worthy. So just give the word, it'll be done. If I can command 100 men, you can command the entire universe, basically is what he's saying. And Jesus says, faith like this I have not found in Israel. And sure enough, in that moment, the servant is healed. And the man's faith was justified. But what did both of them do? The woman with the hemorrhage, the centurion with the servant who was ill. What they both did is they put themselves on that wavelength. The woman by showing up when Jesus was walking through the crowd, and somehow she wiggles her way through the crowd to get close enough to touch the hem of his cloak. I mean, that's effort. The fact that she was even there, that she even knew that he would be around, that she could somehow understand that this person has authority on some level. And the centurion, the same thing. He's aware, somehow intuitively aware, this person has something that can command that. Well, all of us have that potential also. That's the part that's kind of astonishing. And while we deal with our own limitations, I asked Swami once, how many of my own limitations do I have to accept? Well, that's an interesting question. He said, ultimately, none. But in the moment, you have to deal with what's in front of you. You have to deal with what you can do right now. Work with what you have today. Work with what's in front of you to do, rather than trying to tackle all of them at once and getting nowhere and getting frustrated. But all of us can aspire, as Nirmala was with that beautiful quote from Emerson, we can all aspire and get up onto that wavelength, doing it in whatever way is ours to do, doing it through prayer, doing it through meditation, doing it through the inward tapasya, the inward work, whatever that may be. Hopefully it's not wearing chains or standing on one leg. Swami said he ran into a sadhu in India, who I believe in his case it was one arm up in the air, and initially Swami's thought was, this is really strange. But then he saw the man's eyes, then he saw the look on the man's face, and he thought, well, whatever it is he's doing, it's working. And I'm not going to ask any more questions. Something must be right. We experienced this too with some people that we met who were Sufis, and we had this lovely conversation after some spiritual music we all shared. And we both had this thought, whatever the look on their face is, it didn't get there just because they put their makeup on in the morning. It got there because they do something every single day. They didn't just go to church on Sunday and hear something nice and go home and forget about it. Whatever it is, they practice it every single day. Find what that is for you to practice every single day, and it will grow. Just as what Nirmala was saying, it grows bit by bit by bit. We don't have to face the Job situation immediately. Maybe it will come to us, maybe it won't come to us. But all of us can prepare for whatever life is going to send our way. All of us can prepare for the final exam of life. And that is done right here, right now, today, one day at a time. And really, you could even just say one breath at a time. That's the ultimate offering, is just simply every single breath, offer it to God.
The secret of laughter lies in the laughing, not in the search for joy. It's a swallow winging on the wind, its innocence in a boy. Lurelurulero, lurelurulai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Lurelurulero, lurelurulai.
never crave. If you think that laughter lies in things, to things you'll be but a slave. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy in the giving, not in the gaining. Grasp and you'll never sing. You could win the world and still be poor. Win peace and live like a king. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Sing when the sun shines, sing when the rain falls, sing when your road seems strange. In the tempest seize the lightning flash and ride the winds of change.